What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Go Talk with Marcus, powered by Poddex, fueled by Go Fuel. We are officially 75% of the way done with the NFL offseason series. This is episode 24. We're talking the Dallas Cowboys today, the NFC East champs. Bringing on the show for the very first time, Don of Average Joe Sports. What's up, man? How you doing? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? I know we've been trying to plan this for a good while, and I'm glad we're finally doing this. And I love to talk about my boys, so excited about this. Let's get it going. Let's get it going.
I am equally as excited. I think interesting. Of all 32 teams, I didn't think that this would be the episode that people were looking forward to the most. But I do talk a fair share of trash about the Cowboys, so I guess it's warranted. But I think I think I'm going to shock a lot of people today with the things I have to say about the Cowboys. So let's jump right in. Let's start with the big one. I think that's really the focal point of everything that's going on with the Cowboys right now is Amari Cooper was traded to the Cleveland Browns during the offseason. And everyone's talking about how, what is Dak Prescott without Amari Cooper? And Dak Prescott's not a bad quarterback without Amari Cooper. In your eyes, not just as a fan, but like as a guy that knows football, do you expect the absence of Amari Cooper to be a massive issue for Dak specifically as it pertains to his production, as it pertains to his efficiency, and just how good he is as a quarterback this season?
Not necessarily, man. I think a lot of people are looking at the numbers of, Dak, without Cooper, with or without Cooper. So let's put some numbers together, right? Without Cooper, he's got 20 interceptions in 41 games, 65% completion rate, 55 touchdowns, right? With Cooper, 27 interceptions in 44 games. So a little bit more interceptions. The completion percentage is at probably about give or take 2 or 3%, 88 touchdowns, so the uptick. So what I see from my view is what people need to understand is that Dak was still a young quarterback prior to Cooper. It's not as if Dak was 30 years old and then without Cooper, he had X amount of numbers, this, that, and the third. So when people bring up the numbers, there's only 2 games in which Dak has had no Cooper with Cooper on the field where you can see kind of that downtick. So before Cooper, let's put things in perspective. Yes, he had Dez Bryant, and yes, Dez Bryant, he was, he won a lot of battles, a lot of one-on-ones, jump balls through his physicality. However, the talent was not always there. It was more his physicality, his athletic ability, and then his other parts were, Terrence Williams and guys like that. So to put things in perspective, before Amari Cooper, there was no Michael Gallup. CeeDee Lamb was, in my opinion, my guesstimation, was a far greater receiver talent-wise than Dez Bryant ever was. So I'm not anticipating a huge downtick there. And then also Jason Witten was, an old man. He was reliable, but you've seen it. Every time he caught the ball, he wasn't going very far. I'm excited about the athletic ability of Dalton Schultz. We'll get into the O-line and other things, but I don't anticipate a huge downtick from Dak's production without Amari Cooper. I knew this was coming from a Cowboys fan, from a salary cap perspective. I knew this was coming. There was no way we were going to keep Amari Cooper at that $22 million a year cap hit and be successful adding other pieces that we need more. So,
well, the one thing that I will stay consistent with over the course of the show is I've always felt this way. I really do think that owner Jerry Jones should fire general manager Jerry Jones. I think sometimes Jerry Jones gets in his own way and gets in the way of the success of the team. I do think that in hindsight's 2020, right? There's reasons we say when you look at all the contracts we've seen, when you look at DK Metcalf, who just signed a contract that's going to be $24 million a year, when you look at what Terry McLaurin and AJ Brown have signed, both their contracts are hovering around that $24 million a year status. You've seen, Devontae Adams got extended after he went to the Raiders. You've seen all these wide receivers, even Christian Kirk, who got extended as well. They're getting paid around that 24, 23, maybe $25 million a year range. Cooper Kupp's coming down. Cooper Kupp got his extension. He's getting around that amount of money. We're going to see other guys that are on the horizon of their contracts, your Justin Jeffersons and your Jamar Chases. I say all that to say, I don't think that the cap hit, just from a purely football standpoint, I don't think the cap hit is enough to warrant a trade of Amari Cooper because of I agree with you, right? And I've always been a fan of Dak. I hate that he has a star on his helmet, but I've always been a fan of Dak Prescott. He's been
Yes.
he's a wonderful talent. I think he's a top 10 quarterback, and we'll talk about that in a second. But
Right.
Dak has obviously played better. Like you play better when you've got a reliable receiver that you can count on in
Right.
those really big moments, right? That's the case for all quarterbacks, whether you're a great quarterback or a not so great quarterback. Like if you've got that guy that you can connect with and is a solid number one for you, it works. When I'm looking at the roster construction, I'll just be honest, I think ultimately what's happened is the dedication all those a few years ago heavily into Ezekiel Elliott and all the money that was invested into the offensive line and the running back
Right.
and Ezekiel Elliott. That is ultimately why Jerry Jones can't pay Amari Cooper what maybe Amari Cooper wanted, or maybe even what Jerry Jones thought Amari Cooper deserved. So I think that's a Jerry Jones issue. I also think, though, that if you really want to have a guy on the team, you'll just pay it, right? We saw the Browns guaranteed Deshaun Watson $230 million of a contract, and it's
Right.
structured in such a way where this year, where he's going to be missing probably at least half the season, he's not making that much money. Like there are ways that you can kind of manipulate those things. I think sometimes that Jerry's unwillingness to budge and pay players that maybe deserve the money, I think is what ultimately kind of leads to the undoing of the Cowboys. With that being said, though, you still got CeeDee Lamb, right? You still have Michael
Right.
Gallup, who is coming off the ACL. He's probably not going to be ready for week one, but he will be available to you. You still got Dalton Schultz. You have Zeke and Tony Pollard. This is still a talented football team on both sides of the ball. I don't think Dak is going to suffer that much. I don't think Dak is going to suffer as much as people think, primarily because he is a top 10 quarterback. So you're a Cowboys fan, so I can kind of imagine what you're gonna say. But let's just talk about it. Is Dak a top 10 quarterback?
Right. And before I get into that, all those you brought up great points, right? DK Metcalf got paid, Terry McLaurin got paid, Christian Kirk got paid, but there are certain things that in those situations that aren't, you can't relate to the Cowboys because we all know what happens when you pay the quarterback. You see what happened when Seattle, when they paid Russell Wilson, Legion of Boom. You have to start separating those guys, right? So once you pay the quarterback, you have to start looking at those cap hits. Was Zeke Elliott, a smart contract? Probably not, right? But you look at that, and you look at those guys, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. Those are the reason why you drafted CeeDee Lamb, right? So you don't have to pay a Amari Cooper. So CeeDee Lamb is a big reason, big component of why you make a decision. Okay, we don't pay Amari Cooper because we drafted well and we have CeeDee Lamb, right? So, and we already paid the quarterback, but yeah, makes sense. But the quarterback, that top 10, that's tough for me. Even as a Cowboys fan, it's getting tough for me. If you would have gave me top 12, as at fantasy, QB1, I'd still say he's QB1, 11 to 12. Top 10, that's tough. We have a lot of talented young quarterbacks in the league. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, the speedsters and Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, and we got Joe Shiesty. There's just which I love. It's a breath of fresh air. All these young, talented quarterbacks, and then you have the old heads and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers that are still great. True quarterback. Real quarterbacks. So I would say, even as a Cowboys fan, I would say Dak is still probably 11, 12. Just from, what I've seen from him in the playoffs and late in the season, and his play outside of the NFC East, just his play against top tier talent. I'm going to go with him just out of the top 10, as much as that hurts me to say. But it's just from my experience. I think he's uber talented. I definitely think he's one of the top quarterbacks, but I would say he's just a hair outside of the top 10, 11, 12.
Interesting. So I have Dak in my top 10.
Okay.
Dak is ninth on my list. And I know and I've been getting a lot of heat because I think that Dak is better than Lamar. Like if I were to draft a quarterback, I'd take Dak before I'd take Lamar, and I would die on that hill. Like I honestly believe that. When you look at the quarterbacks that are in my top 10, and I'll just list them for you very quickly: Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr. That's my top 10. Of those 10 guys, there's one other guy in that list that's never been to the playoffs. That's Justin Herbert. That's not really his fault. We've all chalked that up to just terrible coaching over the last 2 years that he's had to kind of endure in the most inopportune times. But if he's a playoff quarterback, I mean, Justin Herbert can win you a Super Bowl. Derek Carr is the other guy that's in my top 10 that doesn't have a playoff victory under his belt, and that's because he didn't get his first playoff start until this past season, and he lost to the Cincinnati Bengals in the wild card round.
Right.
Dak Prescott is a phenomenal talent. I think when we look at Dak Prescott, I think you see you can win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott. I honestly believe that. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl with the coach that's on the sidelines, but you can win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott.
Absolutely
and
not.
he has shown that, and he's shown the talent. Now, when we're talking specifically about me having Dak over Lamar, I ask this question all the time, and I don't really get a straight answer. Aside from Lamar's mobility, and he is the greatest dual threat quarterback at this point. Like we got the whole Mike Vick comparison. He is likely going to surpass all the things that Mike Vick did during his time. Aside from what Lamar Jackson brings to the table from a mobility standpoint, there's nothing that Lamar Jackson does better than Dak Prescott. There's nothing that Kyler Murray does aside from mobility that is glaringly, obviously, like you can split hairs about maybe Kyler Murray is a better deep ball passer. Maybe Kyler Murray is slightly more accurate, but it's not. There are no glaring differences between those two quarterbacks who are, it seems to be widely consensus in the top 10 compared to Dak Prescott. And that's fine. That's fine. Dak's a better passer. He's more accurate. He's a better decision maker. He takes better care of the football. He's going to make defenses pay. He's a phenomenal. He's made questionable decisions, but by and large,
Right.
you look at his entire work. He makes good decisions, and on top of that, he's also not that shabby of a mobile quarterback himself. We didn't see much of that last season because he was coming off of the ankle injury, wanted to be a little bit careful, and then of course he had the calf injury.
Right.
But I expect now another year removed from the ankle injury, and now looking like the calf injury is seemingly in the rearview mirror for sure. Dak Prescott will get back to being that mobile guy that we're seeing in the red zone, being physical, kind of on those QB scrambles and being, doing the things we were accustomed to seeing Dak Prescott do in the earlier parts of his career before he ran into two unfortunate injuries. Like the best ability is availability, and
Right.
Dak Prescott's always available, and he's a damn good quarterback. And you're right, he's in the top 12 for sure. I'm not of the belief that not having Dak in the top 10 is egregious, but I am firmly of the mindset that if you want to list all the quarterbacks that you could win a Super Bowl with right now in the NFL, and we're not going to include Deshaun Watson because we haven't seen him play football in a year. But if you just list the 10 guys that you could win a Super Bowl with, Dak is 100% on that list. He's on the back end of the list, but he's on the list nonetheless.
Right, and I would say to the argument of Lamar Jackson not being able to do the things from a throwing the football perspective, I get all that. But Lamar Jackson, quarterback like that, is so far ahead of every other quarterback, even quarterbacks like Dak, Herbert, Allen, that rush the football, that aren't at that top athletic ability like Lamar Jackson. He's so far ahead from a rushing ability standpoint that it kind of makes up for the lack of throwing ability, the lack of awareness, the lack of, because he's got an arm. It's just, it's cerebral enough to make the smart decision, get to that second, third, fourth read. Maybe he doesn't have that, but he just so. I mean, he's a nightmare for defensive coordinators, right? Even though he's so limited, from a throwing perspective, he's such a nightmare because he can just take off and he's gone. And he's so agile. He's not just fast. He's so agile, and he's just a nightmare for quarterbacks and D-ends and linebackers to get a hold of him. Once he gets that hold, I mean, he's gone. So it's tough for me to kind of, compare apples to apples when he's so far ahead of the curve from an athletic standpoint.
Of course. He is definitely the most, or at least one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the NFL today. Definitely one of the most athletic quarterbacks we've ever seen. Let's talk about Ezekiel Elliott. Let's talk about Tony Pollard. I think that's a big point of focus, I think, as far as how far the Cowboys can go, especially now that they do not have Amari Cooper. If you're in charge and you're making the decision, are you standing by Zeke as being RB1, or are you heavy leaning a little bit more onto Tony Pollard? How are you balancing the workload in the backfield this season for the Cowboys? Because the running game is going to become that much more important, given that Amari Cooper is now no longer on the roster.
Right. Not to give a political political answer, but a lot of running back backfields are going by committee. That's
right.
just a transitional NFL, you have to adapt and understand that there's different backs for different things. I think Elliott is a better first and second down back. I think he's a better back inside the 20, inside the 10, inside the 5. Now, Pollard, he's very electric. If you look at all the analytical things, the efficiencies, yards per carry from a rushing standpoint and from a receiving standpoint, Pollard is that guy. But he also is getting into opportunistic, advantageous situations in which the defense is usually depleted. Maybe it's 3rd and 12 or whatever, and he's in there on 3rd down. And he's getting a 8-yard pass, or maybe it's a draw and he's getting 7 yards when the defense only has to defend. They have to defend 12 yards, whatever the case may be. So to answer your question, I know it's very political. I still like Zeke on 1st and 2nd down. Now, if you tell me you have to keep one and get rid of the other one, if you're looking at the contracts, of course I want to get rid of Zeke. I never liked the contract. I'm a huge advocate of not paying the running back. It's just the running back is so easily replaceable. It's one of the quickest transitional positions in the league from a college to NFL perspective. I do not like paying the running back. As much as I love Zeke coming in, he's phenomenal at Ohio State. He was great his first couple of years. And he's a workhorse, right? He's a guy that maybe if he gets banged up, you talked about availability, he's always available. He's banged up, but he's always on the field. But yeah, it's tough for me. I got to go with Zeke still as a all-around complete back. Pollard is electric, but I don't know if Pollard can be that guy from his size and just what I'm seeing from him, like in between the tackles.
I think.
Give it to me, Marcus. Come on.
There needs to be, when you look across the NFL, right? You've got Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. You've got A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. You've got Cam Akers and I'm drawing a blank on Henderson, right? You've got so many. You've got Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. You've got apparently potentially a good running back duo with Devin Singletary and James Cook in Buffalo. You have so many places across the NFL where you're looking at least 2 running backs that complement each other and or do different things for the offense that work together for the whole. And that is what the Cowboys have. You've got Zeke, you have Tony Pollard. I like to think of it as thunder and lightning, right? Zeke is the much more physical bell cow kind of guy. He's going to fight for the tough yards. Tony Pollard's he's a much better receiver out of the backfield, but he could also spring a big one outside the tackles. You're going to want Zeke to go inside the tackles, right? I say all that to say, at this point in Ezekiel Elliott's career, I think that when healthy, he is a top 10 running back, in the top 15 for sure. At his best, he's still in the top 10. But when I'm looking at Tony Pollard and I'm looking at Ezekiel Elliott, my perspective is, why neglect Tony Pollard because of this undying loyalty to Zeke because of the contract? Because if we look at the numbers statistically, banged up or not, statistically, Zeke's been on a decline. His yards per carry has declined since he's been in the league. That's not good. That's not what you want to see. Granted, as you mentioned, right, running backs do have the shortest shelf life of any position on the field, skill position or alignment. That's just the way it works. At this point, I'd like to see Tony Pollard get a little bit more, because you know that at this point Zeke has been banged up a lot. So you want to decrease the mileage, because Zeke's still a good back, but he's got a lot of miles on him because there was a point in time when it was just him, and because it was just him, he started getting banged up, and we're starting to see that. So you want to mitigate the mileage that goes up, because there's going to become a point in time when you're going to have to let Zeke go. Whether it's you trade him, whether it's you don't pay him, you just let him walk, whatever the case is, there's going to have to come a point in time when Zeke walks. And when that point in time comes, you're going to have someone that can step into that role, and then someone that can be behind Zeke's predecessor to become his predecessor. Like you got to have that consistent flow. I think Tony Pollard is prime for that, not just from a fantasy standpoint, obviously, because I had Tony Pollard on my fantasy team last season. It was great. But from a logistics standpoint as well, Tony Pollard's a fantastic back, and I think they should use him more. I think they'll use him a little bit more in the receiving game now that they don't have Amari Cooper. Obviously, you want to get that a little bit more as much as possible. But using Zeke, and I don't want to say limiting Zeke, but using Zeke, I think at this point in his career, a lot more in the red zone benefits you a lot more, and keeping Zeke and using Tony Pollard
in the
in
open fields,
between
for
the
sure.
20s in the open fields, I
Right.
think spells more success. Because how often are we, it's not that he can't do it, but how often are we going to see this season Zeke break off for those 20, 30, 40-yard runs that
Not
he was
often,
breaking
yeah.
off? Or it's not often because of the mileage. Tony Pollard, though, because he doesn't have that mileage, because he's young, he's more elusive, he's lighter. I think his ball carrier vision is slightly better. You can get those big time runs out of Tony Pollard and then hand it to Zeke from the 20 into the goal line and get
Right.
those tough yards, when you're trying to punch it in the end zone. I think that
Right.
should be the game plan, because you got to figure something out, because you got to make sure that the offense is still flowing now, because the loss of Amari Cooper doesn't just affect the passing game, it affects the run game, it affects the play action game, it affects all these different things. They're going to have to make sure that that balance is the same.
Right.
So I'm looking at Kellen Moore, just trying to figure out how he's going to make it happen. I hope I think he'll do the right thing, not the right thing, but I'm sure he'll make something out of nothing, because he's an exceptional offensive mind.
Right.
But I think you should lean on Tony Pollard a lot more from 20 to 20, and lean on Zeke a lot more from 20 into the goal line, as far as success is concerned, and red zone efficiency as well, because that's what wins football games, is scoring, especially once you're inside the 20.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you hit it right on the nose, right? Kellen Moore has to, increase his creativity, right? Get Tony Pollard on the field more, and if that means getting him more on the field between the 20s, that makes a ton of sense. I guess more my point is there are a lot of people lobbying for Tony Pollard to replace Zeke Elliott altogether,
No,
and I'm
not
not
yet.
on that part. He's not for me. So for me, when you look at an Alexander Madison and a Dalvin Cook, and you look at just their physicality and their body and what they can do in their entirety, I get that aspect. I get Alexander apples to apples being able to replace him. Tony Pollard, I just from his size, and I just don't see it sustaining. It's much harder to find an every down back, a bell cow like a Zeke Elliott than a Tony Pollard. Not to take anything away from how special Tony Pollard is, but if Tony Pollard was to be gone somewhere else and the O-line was clicking, Zeke was clicking, we could probably find another Tony Pollard over just how harder it would be to find another Zeke. So
yeah, it's not often you're going to get that bell cow back, especially in today's NFL with the way the athletes are now. CeeDee Lamb, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 this season. Big things for CeeDee Lamb this season. Are you expecting him to take that next step? He had a solid rookie season. I think he missed 1 or 2 games last season due to injury, but he still had a really good season. Well, he wasn't a rookie last season, but he's had a really good season last season. Do you expect him to continue to, grow and develop, especially now that he is the wide receiver 1, so he's going to be getting a lot more of those targets? Defenses are going to be keying in on him a lot more, because he is going to be wide receiver 1 on the depth chart moving forward this season.
Yes. Just to put some numbers together, his rookie season, 74 catches, 935 yards, 5 touchdowns, 111 targets. Last year, 79 catches, 1,100 yards, 120 targets. Now we've been hearing all offseason the vacated targets in Dallas, 214 through the absence of who we talked about, Amari Cooper, Cedric Wilson that went to Miami Dolphins. So naturally, just from the volume itself, he should be ascending, as he already was ascending even with Amari Cooper last year, right? So I expect big things just from the volume, and for him to clean up, just watching the games, him to clean up the route running a little bit and the communication with Dak, because there was a lot of times where it seemed like they weren't in sync. He had a little bit of the drops, but it just seemed like Dak went his way and they weren't on the same page. They weren't on, say, the wavelength. So obviously they're going to have to work together a ton this year. So I expect him to clean up a few things of some of his route running, and through the additional volume, I definitely think CeeDee Lamb is going to ascend. I think he's going to be one of the top 5 receivers in the league this year for sure. So CeeDee Lamb is definitely my guy. I think he's going to do great things in 2022, provided he has a tremendous health.
In an effort to not sound redundant, I'll say I completely agree with everything you're saying. I expect big things for CeeDee Lamb. Let's go from one young guy on offense to the young guy on defense. That's Micah Parsons, who is the talk of the town in Dallas, has been from the moment he was drafted last season. All eyes, I think, are on Micah Parsons this season. There was rumblings that he could potentially win Defensive Player of the Year last season. Obviously, that went to DJ Watt. I know he got a couple votes for Defensive Player of the Year last season. He did win Defensive Rookie of the Year last season. I mean, why wouldn't he, as great as he was last season? Do you expect him to be a DPOY candidate this season, given that given that he's basically lined up everywhere on the defense except for the secondary last season, and it worked every single time? What are your expectations for Micah Parsons this season, his sophomore season?
To be honest, I'm a little worried, and that's nothing to do with Micah Parsons. There's a lot to do with the front office moves that they've made, right? We talked about, Cowboys being able to pay the right players. Randy Gregory walked, right? Obviously, Randy Gregory he's got his off-field issues, but when he does play, and he's got some injury issues too as well. So that's another conversation of why I understand why they didn't pay him. He's missed a ton of games. Nonetheless, I'm a little worried because they asked so much of Micah Parsons, and now he doesn't even have someone on the opposite end. I don't know. They drafted a guy, Sam Williams, excellent pass rusher in the second round this year. He's got some ironically enough, he's got some off-field issues. It seems like Jerry Jones just love the edgy guys. But yeah, I'm a little worried. We'll get into that. That's one of the weaknesses the Cowboys have is their D-line. Micah's going to be special. We're asking, Neville Gilmore. We're asking some guys on the interior line to step up and progress, and I think they will take a step forward. But he's going to need some help, and there's going to be a lot of attention on Micah this year, right? They know that what he's able to do, and also, Micah's kind of like a Tyler Lockett, if you will. He has these huge games in which he'll get to the quarterback. I believe he played Denver Broncos. He had 13 sacks in total. Denver Broncos, 2.5 sacks. He went to a run where he was getting 2 sacks. The last 4 or 5 games, he only had 1 sack, right? And obviously, sacks aren't the direct, metric in terms of, success. You want to look at more quarterback hurries, but you would like to see a little bit more consistency there. So again, I'm a little worried of Micah Parsons' production, not his skill set, because obviously he's going to be phenomenal. He's going to show up every day, and he's going to do what he's asked to do, right? Show up in linebacker position, show up in the edge, and things of that nature. I'm worried because he doesn't have a lot of help, and there's going to be a lot of attention. Everybody knows who Micah Parsons is, and they don't want to get embarrassed by him. So from a production and number standpoint, I don't know if he's going to get the numbers this year. I think he's going to get fewer sacks than he did his rookie year, which was 13. I could see him in probably 8 to 10 range, 7 to 10 range, and spreading it all across the board from, tackles and whatnot, forced fumbles maybe. But I'm a little worried because he doesn't have the help, and there's going to be a lot of attention, a lot of help, a lot of guard pulling and to help the tackle, right? So
let's talk about a tweet that I never thought I'd ever tweet in my life. I tweeted it a day ago, and I honestly can't believe I did it. I'm sure I've got some friends and family that are adamant Cowboy haters that won't like that I tweeted it, but I did because I believe it. I want to see Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys succeed this season, but it ain't happening with Mike McCarthy as the head coach. I can't believe I said that, but I do. Listen, despite all the slack that I cut on the Dallas Cowboys, let's be honest. Like, football is better when the Dallas Cowboys are good and compete for championships, right? That is the truth.
Right.
It's not going to be competing for a championship with Mike McCarthy. It's just not going to happen. And this isn't me as a Packers fan, like, talking bad about the former head coach, because I do appreciate Mike McCarthy for what he did as far as helping us get to the Super Bowl. Was it now 11 years ago? I'm greatly appreciative of that. But here's the thing: Mike McCarthy has 2 jobs, and I think he's the only coach in the NFL, off the top of my head, that doesn't have any play calling responsibilities. Kellen Moore calls the offense. Dan Quinn calls the defense. Both of them do a tremendous job of doing such. All Mike McCarthy has to do is manage the clock and keep this team disciplined. This team was the most penalized team in football last season, including an egregious showing of discipline on Thanksgiving last season against the Raiders that ultimately resulted in a loss. But also, like, his clock management is terrible. And I'm not even talking about the 13 seconds at the end of the 49ers game. We're talking about, like, just routine things that you see as far as calling timeouts heading into the half to try to put your team in a position to score points, whether you're ahead or, like, just simple things like that. Mike McCarthy is failing at. Jerry Jones, at the opening of training camp, was on the mic, as you can always catch Jerry Jones in front of Mike, basically saying that he does have faith in Mike McCarthy's, but he has options. Listen, you're not mentioning options unless you're looking to explore those options. And he's got 3 good ones. He got Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn, both of them are on the staff. And of course, there is the looming threat that maybe Sean Payton comes out of retirement as soon as next season to come coach the Dallas Cowboys. 2-part question. Is Mike McCarthy on the hot seat? And if he is, what does he have to do to get off of the hot seat this season?
He's absolutely in the hot seat, as he should have been. He should have been gone. If I was Jerry Jones, if I was GM, if I was the owner, Mike McCarthy would have been gone. Okay, if the year before last, you wanted to sell me on, let's give him another chance, whatever the case may be. After the showing that the Cowboys had the previous season, he's gone. But to answer your question, what he needs is at least bare minimum, he needs to get to the conference championship. Anything short of the conference championship, he better be gone. There's no if and buts about it. And even if me, because
does the road matter? Like, can they be a wild card team that gets like it? Just play in the NFC Championship game, no matter what it takes. Just get there.
Just get there.
Okay.
And honestly, I dislike Mike McCarthy so much. I would still need to see how we play in the conference. If we go in the conference championship and we just play like we did the Raiders, do some bad mistakes like the Niners, right? In which Mike McCarthy isn't on the hook for all of it. Like you can't beat Dak. You can't beat Dak. He can't be the quarterback too. You can't tell Dak we have no timeouts. Maybe don't run the ball, even though you think you have enough time. Don't run the ball right there.
Of course,
whatever the case may be. But yeah, I would say conference championship for sure. If not, he better be gone. Because if you're not, a lot of Cowboy fans probably won't be watching the next season because we're tired. We're tired. Yeah, it's been bad, man. But I would love to see a Sean Payton, and a lot of people have alluded to that and talked about why are they getting rid of Connor Williams, they're getting rid of Leo Collins and all these cap casualties, and they're saying the rumors is that they're saying they're trying to give another coach the opportunity with obviously a quarterback in place and with the cap space to mold their team the way they want to. But yeah, Mike McCarthy, you got to go. He's got to go.
Here's my opinion, and again, like I said, I talk a lot. I've talked more good about the Cowboys in the last 30 minutes than I've ever done in my life. So this is news to me as much as it is to the Cowboys fans who were pressing me about when the episode's dropping.
Right.
Mike McCarthy has to go regardless. I don't care if it's. I mean, it's. You're not going to fire the coach if they win the Super Bowl, but I don't care what happens this season. Mike McCarthy has to go. Mike McCarthy should have been gone after the first season. Why wasn't he gone? Well, because Dak broke his ankle. So like, oh, well, I really couldn't do what I wanted to do because Dak broke his ankle. Fine. I hate that, by the way. I honestly hate that coaches get a year of reprieve after having a bad season because the star player gets hurt. I hated that Joe Judge got to come back to the Giants after Saquon got hurt his first. Like, but whatever. So Mike McCarthy gets another season. And here's the thing. Regardless of how historically great the NFC East has been, and historically the NFC East is the winningest division in football. They've got the most division titles, or the most Super Bowl titles. They're the only division in football where all four teams have been to and won at least one Super Bowl. It's crazy to think, but that's all the far distant past. Recently, this has been a dumpster division, and we all watched Jerry Jones hold on to the mediocrity that was Jason Garrett, and time after time we saw these 8-8 seasons, but Jason Garrett kept coming back. Now, granted, that's because of the relationship that Jason Garrett has with Jerry Jones and the relationship that they bonded. Here's why I'm always so hard on the Cowboys. It's not just that they're the Dallas Cowboys and that they're America's team, that the star means something. Jerry Jones has expectations. Like, every time Jerry Jones is on a mic, he's talking about championships and competing for championships and being somewhere in the championship picture. But the decisions that are made don't always line up to wanting to compete for a championship. While I respect the loyalty that Jerry Jones has shown to coaches and to players, whether we as the fans think it's warranted or not, there's no reason for Mike McCarthy to be the head coach of the season. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
because when your two basic jobs are to discipline the team or make sure the team stays disciplined and manage the clock, and you failed at both of those things at the most inopportune times, and it wasn't like little mishaps. They were so glaringly obvious that it ultimately came to the undoing of your season and your hope for a championship. Because here's the thing, right? Okay, they didn't have any timeouts that last drive, but the reason they didn't have any timeouts was because Mike misused the timeouts throughout the course of the second half that ultimately put them in a position where they have no timeouts. So that is an issue. And the reason why I say that the owner, Jerry, needs to fire GM Jerry is because until Jerry Jones gets out of his own way and lets someone not named Jerry Jones or someone that doesn't have the Jones last name make decisions for football for the Dallas Cowboys, it is very hard to see a scenario in which the Cowboys are going to be competing for championships, at whether it's a perennial conference championship appearance or appearances in the Super Bowl. This is a roster that on paper has gotten better. The defense has improved on a talent standpoint and statistically. The offense has on paper gotten better from what it was when Mike first got there, and statistically they have as well, but it's resulted in nothing. That's not acceptable. Like, there are some scenarios when you look at it and you say, this is the quarterback's problem. right? Like Jared
Yeah.
Goff in LA. Like they went to the Super Bowl and
Right.
lost because they didn't have a good quarterback. There are other scenarios when you have a good quarterback and it's a coaching problem, like in
Right.
Arizona. Kyler
Right.
Murray's a fantastic quarterback. That's a fantastic team. Cliff Kingsbury stinks. That is the scenario that the Dallas Cowboys are facing. You have talent offensively, you got talent defensively, you got a damn good OC, you got a damn good DC, but the head honcho, the head coach, the guy that is paid to kind of bring it all together and bring the Lombardi Trophy back to Dallas isn't good at his job anymore, and he needs to be gone. And I don't.
Yep.
Mike's gonna find a reason, I'm sure, if they do make the playoffs and win a playoff game to vouch for himself coming back. But Jerry recognizes that Mike is on the hot seat, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have brought up options. Like, you don't bring up options if you're not exploring or thinking about exploring those options. And you can say that, look, will Kellen Moore pan out? We don't know. Dan Quinn's second trip around the track. Maybe he does better this time than he does in Atlanta.
Right.
But I know that I would much rather have one of those two guys or Sean Payton than have Mike McCarthy. And if I'm being honest, I'd much rather have Sean Payton, because I wouldn't want Kellen Moore or Dan Quinn to move from just primarily focusing on the offense and the defense. Sean Payton, I think, is going to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys next season, no matter what happens. And the only way that's not the case is if the Cowboys win the Super Bowl. And I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I think this is Mike's last chance. And it is, usually we say it's Super Bowl or bust for a team. The Cowboys aren't Super Bowl or bust. But if Mike wants to be the head coach again next season, he needs to deliver a Super Bowl this season or it's done. Because the NFC is wide open. The NFC is wide open. Once you get past the Bucs and the Rams and maybe my Packers, but there's questions. The NFC is wide open. So the playoff hunt's wide open, and then it could be any team that makes it, of course, from there to the Super Bowl. AFC is a different conversation. But getting there is what Mike McCarthy needs. I don't think he has it in him. I think this is Mike McCarthy's last season as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Insert Sean Payton, insert whoever, but it won't be Mike McCarthy head coaching the Dallas Cowboys. Hell, insert Jerry Jones. I don't know, but it shouldn't be heading into next season.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? The Cowboys, obviously one of the most undisciplined teams in the league. Tyson Smith, first round pick, the most penalized lineman in his conference.
Yeah.
Sam Williams, the notorious for drafting and signing character issue guy. Sam Williams, I think he got cleared from some murder charge or conspiracy to murder. He got cleared like right before the draft. It just can't make this shit up.
You cannot. So the Cowboys won the division last year at, was it 10-7, I believe it was last season.
Yes.
Do the Cowboys win the division again this season? What's your record prediction? Because the Eagles have made a lot of moves.
Right.
And the Eagles took a lot of steps forward while the Cowboys kind of took some steps back. So we kind of talked about this on Instagram in the comments on one of the videos you posted a couple weeks ago that kind of sparked this whole thing of getting you on the show. So where do you have your Cowboys ranking in the division? How many wins are they going to accumulate when it's all said and done this season?
Right. So I pride myself on being a Cowboys fan with my feet on the ground. I'm very grounded. So I'm gonna keep it real, man. I think the Cowboys are gonna have decent success, partly because they have the second easiest schedule in the league, and that's not just because of the opponents in the division. They truly play some dog shit opponents, but I still have the Eagles edging the Cowboys out. I have the Eagles at 11-7, Cowboys at 10 at Eagles at 11-7, Cowboys at 10 and Eagles at 11-6, Cowboys at 10-7. And the reason is because I think a lot of football games are won in the trenches. And the Cowboys' weakness, number one weakness, Cowboys O-line. What is the Eagles' strength? Their D-line. Cowboys' weakness, their D-line. Eagles' another strength, O-line. So they're going to kill us in the trenches. And where we had a lot of advantages in the Eagles' weakness is their secondary. Got rid of Amari Cooper. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to do great things. He's going to progress, and from a fantasy perspective and real football perspective. But without Amari Cooper, I don't think we have the weapons to offset those things that are going to happen in the trenches. So I just think that the Eagles did enough. I think their strengths counter our weaknesses very well, and vice versa. So I think the Eagles will edge the Cowboys. As much as I hate to say that, maybe it needs to happen to get Mike McCarthy the hell out of Dodge, get him off my team, get him out. But yeah, I think the Eagles are going to edge the Cowboys out. I think it's going to be close, like it always is. It's going to come down to the last 1 or 2 weeks. But I
Yeah.
firmly believe the Eagles are going to edge the Cowboys out, and Cowboys will be a close second, missing the playoffs.
Listen, I think the Cowboys have listen, you're right. The Cowboys have the second easiest schedule in football. And I mean, when you're playing 10 games against the two divisions that are likely going to be the worst division in football this season, it makes perfect sense. They've got a healthy balance, though, in the first 8 weeks of the season. They start off tough, though. They're both at home, but they've got Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. That's a tough one. 2 winnable games. I don't think they'll win either one of them. Then, of course, you've got 2 games against the Giants and Washington. You've got Detroit. You've got Philly, Chicago, and the Rams. I have the Cowboys winning 11 games this season. I think the Cowboys go 11-6. I think that puts them second in the division, and I think that'll be just enough to get them in the playoffs. Listen, I am of the mindset that the race this season in the NFC is an 8-team race. It's the Rams, the Eagles, the Packers, the Bucks, the Saints, the Vikings, the Cowboys, and the Cardinals. I've never had faith in the Cardinals. I've never had a reason to have faith in the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start now. So with that being said, it's really just a 7-horse race, and what do you know? There's 7 spots open for the playoffs. It can go either way. I have really high hopes for Dak Prescott this season. I have really high hopes for CeeDee Lamb this season. I have really high hopes for Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott this season. Being born in a family of a whole bunch of Washington Commanders fans, and being a Packers fan myself, I don't think
it was a catch, by the way.
It wasn't a catch, but it's fine. I don't think I would ever have uttered those words, but I really do. I think that there is obviously questions, right? What does the offense look like without Zeke? What does the defense look like now that they've lost a couple pieces, namely Randy Gregory? But all in all, this is still a really talented team on both sides of the ball. It's just really hard to look past the eyesore that is Mike McCarthy. When you've got 10 games against the AFC South and the NFC East combined, that's enough to put you in the playoffs, right? I think so. But we're not going to be judging the Cowboys based off of those 10 games. We're going to be judging the Cowboys based off how they look against Tampa Bay, Cincinnati, the Rams. We're going to judge them how they look against the Green Bay and Minnesota, Indianapolis. Those are and Tennessee to a degree. Those are the teams that we're looking at and saying, how are the Cowboys going to fare against those teams, against the 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl last year and against a team that won the Super Bowl just 2 years ago against my Packers. I can't wait for that game. I wish it was in Dallas. I'd go, but it's in Green Bay and it'll be way too cold by then. But those are the games that matter. And to your point earlier, those are the games usually when we see the Cowboys struggle. It's not against their own division because Dak is perfect except for one game against the division. It's against those other teams, those other playoff caliber teams, both in the conference and in the AFC that are concerning. I think the concern will still exist, but I also think that there's a chance that maybe, just maybe, the Cowboys can overcome the incompetence of Mike McCarthy just enough to get into the playoffs and maybe win one playoff game. I think the Cowboys winning one playoff game this season makes it a successful season, and it's a beautiful starting point to build off of for when Sean Payton inevitably shakes Jerry Jones' hands down there in Jerry World as a new head coach next season with the Cowboys helmet in his hand. So yeah, I'm gonna go 11-6, and that would put them 6th in the 5th or 6th in the NFC, and they'll be back in the wild card round. And we'll see what happens from there. So thank you, Don, for coming on the show.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
For those of you guys that are listening, yes, this is Marcus. I know I've talked a lot of good stuff about the Cowboys, but I'm the same person. You can come over to YouTube and watch me say these things. I can't believe I'm saying them either. But please, everybody know where they can find you, your show, and all of your content before we get out of here.
Yes, we produce an episode every week. Usually it's on Tuesday evenings. You can find us on Instagram, @AverageJoes_sports. My name is Don. I have a co-host, Albert, with me that we rock every week. So we talk about football. We talk about baseball, basketball. We usually hit those 3 main sports, but we might throw a curveball and hit up a couple of other sports. So come on over, give us a chat, and we'll get it popping.
It is good stuff. You guys should definitely head over there and check out their content. And then, of course, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok @GTP Marcus, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Go Talk Marcus. We're recording this on Friday. So by the time this comes out, it'll be Monday, which means it's August 1st. By then, hopefully you will have watched the Cardinals episode that dropped on Friday and the SummerSlam preview episode that dropped on Saturday. And you'll know that tomorrow, so Tuesday, August 2nd, will mark 2 years of Go Talk. The 2-year anniversary show will be on the 3rd. So please be on the lookout for that. It'll be live on YouTube at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time p.m. I'll have some special guests to come on, and we'll talk about some of the big things happening in the world of sports. And I'll sit back and enjoy the fact that I've been doing this for 2 years and I haven't pulled my hair out or blown my brains out. So it's been an incredible ride. I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Don, for coming on the show. I'll definitely have you back on the show, especially come Cowboys week for my so
Absolutely, man. Congrats on the 2 years, and I wish you much success in your journey.
I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. So for Don of Average Joe Sports, this is Marcus of Go Talk Marcus signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always,
see you guys.